Hi there folks, and happy 1st of March. Welcome to our micro greenhouse here. Those familiar with my channel know the backstory. Those who are not, I will link to a short description of this space. It's a small, maybe 4.5 square meter, very basic greenhouse with polycarbonate 4mm thin sheets, so it basically does not really protect plants from the very cold weather. And you can see that even in today's relatively warm winter day, it's 16 inside and 13 outside, so not much of a difference. Now you can see that there's a lot of stuff growing here. I wanted to quickly talk about pre-winter starting of greens, winter growing, early spring growing, timing problems, and how to set your expectations as to not be too disappointed if you're growing in a cold climate such as ours with cold winters, even if this one was one of the mildest winters on record and certainly the driest and warmest February. Now first, let's talk garlic and onion. This green garlic here was planted in cloves in early December, and in the same day the onions were planted here, from not from onion sets but from small heads of onion from our last year's harvest. Now for 40 days up to early to mid-January, none of those onions actually grew above ground. They produced some roots. I checked on a few of them, but for 40 days, until the days were getting shorter and shorter and the weather was getting colder, they didn't grow at all. All of this growth which you're witnessing is a result of a very warm February, and usually they don't grow as quickly if the weather is colder. So if I had planted the onions and the garlic in early February, by now they will probably be in the same size. There's not much to be won and gained from very early planting, especially if the winter is with the more normal cooler temperatures. Similarly, I seeded some radishes here in mid-December, and they germinated and didn't grow at all. They kept in this microscopic baby size for more than 2 months, and they actually started growing and forming little radishes in the last couple of weeks. So we're still maybe getting some yield out of them, but I'm certain that if I planted them mid or early February, I'll be getting a much more even germination. You can see all of the empty spots around, and also they will be the same size by now. Another interesting example, this lettuce was planted here in the greenhouse at some time in October, so we picked a few of the lower leaves before it got too cold, and then it overwintered, and now it's already big enough to be picked for salad from the bottom up. But all of that again was from the last 2 weeks in our very warm February. And this here is a self-seeded lettuce which germinated in the early February, and in 1 month this is the size it reached. So you can see that even though there is a size difference, this one was here for just 30 days, and this was here for by the end of March. This will reach to the size of this one, and not much is to be gained besides a couple of pickings from the bottom leaves of this lettuce as well. The rocket or the arugula was also planted with the onions and the garlics in December, and it didn't really grow made just a single pick in December, no pickings in January, and a single pick in the late February. And it's really starting to grow now, quicker with the warmer days. But as you probably know, with overwintering arugula, as soon as the weather turns warmer, you can see that it already starts producing flower stalks, and soon the flower buds will appear. So this arugula is not really suitable for long-term harvest. We'll be getting maybe a couple more cuts of here, and I'll be removing the seed heads, of course, by just pinching them out. But that won't delay the flowering by much. So when you see those symptoms, it's a good time to seed start your new arugula, put some new seeds in the ground. So when it's time to uproot all that and remove, and when they start to flower and remove all the arugula, you have another place with younger arugula to continue the picking in the spring and early summer. It's similar with the felt salad or corn salad, as some of you probably know it. This little row here was planted again in mid-December, and it stood at about this size for the last few months, and it started really growing just in the last couple of weeks. So we didn't really pick much from it for those several months. I really can see the benefit of having it overwintered, besides a tiny bit of earlier start. But we're still eating our winter salads and root crops and sour cabbage, so we're not in a rush to produce greens this early in the year. Those little lettuces, they are also experimental overwintering, and you can see that some of them are larger in size and some of them are smaller. This obviously is related to the way they handle the cold. The coldest temperature here in the greenhouse in January was -15, and even though we covered what we could with the row cover in 2 layers, it didn't really help the new lettuce start. So this seedling tray here, you can see that we have two very different in size generations of lettuce start. Those bigger ones, they were started on December the 30th with the idea to see if we can have this size of seedling in January, so we can transplant them here in the greenhouse under row cover, and have lettuce a little bit earlier, because we're still learning how to work with our micro greenhouse. But the problem with that was that even though this whole tray was under 4 or maybe 5 layers of row cover, it didn't survive the -15 degrees, and most of the seedlings, which were about that size or maybe a little bit bigger, on the outside edge, they died off, and just the middle portions, the middle cells, kept their seedlings alive, which is a bit of a mystery to me, but this is what happened. And then last week I put some new seeds here just to see if they will grow, and because we had warmer weather, they germinated very quickly and developed also very quickly. And here in the back next to the garlic, you can see seedlings that are growing also nice directly in the soil, and those are 2 weeks old. So you can see that they're quickly catching up. 1 week, 2 week, 2 months and a bit. Already from those missing cells here, we took the plugs out and separated them. Some of them have only 1 or 2 lettuces, but some have 4 or 5 or more, and planted those out. Here in many spots, and here as well, and down in the garden under a plastic cover. We plant stuff densely because we harvest them continuously, so that lettuce won't have trouble growing. I'll be harvesting some onion leaves for salad, some lettuce leaves, and some spinach, so it will have ample space to develop. And when it gets larger, we'll start harvesting it from below, and by that time it will probably already be too warm for lettuce anyway, and we'll have to start planting cucumbers and tomatoes here. And you can see we did a little experiment with peas as well to see if they will germinate in the greenhouse, but I was very disappointed by the quality of this seed. We usually use our own seed for everything which you see here in the greenhouse, the lettuce, the spinach, the arugula, etc. But this year I decided to try some new variety of peas, so I bought some new seeds, and you can see how little of them germinated. Each of the slots should have 3 pea plants in it, and basically none of them germinated 3 seeds, at most 2, and most of them had none. So I did a second round of sowing, and they're starting to show now after a week or so. But as usually happens, I'm getting disappointed with the quality of both seeds, so maybe we'll be seeding in the garden our own pea seeds. So this was our first winter with this structure here, with this micro greenhouse, and it showed us a valuable lesson. For our climate and our conditions, it makes absolutely no sense to rush and start things from seed here in December. It has to either be established and growing from October, like those bigger lettuces, so they have a better chance of overwintering, and we can do a couple of harvests from them maybe. Same for the radishes. If we started them in October, we would have a harvest. But also, if we seed starting here in the ground, it makes no sense to do that before late January, early February, and only if the weather is warm. With the regular sub-zero nights of February, which we're usually getting, we'll probably be waiting until later in the month to start anything here, because things will usually, they seem to catch up very quickly when the weather is warm, and they seem to just sit and do nothing when it's cold. I'm not saying that there's no use of overwintering stuff here in the micro greenhouse. If you are absolutely desperate for some greens, or if you are satisfied with very small harvests, just a couple of handfuls of green, or if 1 week to 10 days advance in harvesting time is ultimately the most important thing to you, you should experiment in your climate. And if we were in that position, we will certainly be doing more overwinter here, maybe with more permanent row covers, maybe even with some plastic covers here to keep the warmth from the soil and not have it dissipate higher up, because the height here is about 2 meters in the tallest part of the greenhouse. So certainly if we had this covered with plastic and row cover, it would have been warmer, and maybe the minus 15 degrees which we had for a few nights wouldn't be so detrimental to the growth. But generally I see winter as a time to eat your root vegetables, your fermented vegetables, and enjoy season appropriate food. Of course, it's good to have greens if available, but as it often turns out to be the case, we can't seem to rush nature too much, because in the end things happen in their own pace. So that was all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.